Welcome to another episode of Music and Creativity by Dogma. Thank you very much for being here. Today we are with Frank Garcia and Ruth Burotte from Golin. They are in Miami, although they're not from Miami. So why don't you guys tell us a little bit about yourselves? How did you end up in Miami in Golin, and what is it about Golin that makes it a bit of a different agency?
I was born in New York, but I moved out of there when I was still 1 years old. So I was raised in Georgia, up until I was like a junior in high school, and then I moved to South Florida right in the summer of my sophomore junior year. So I became more Miami based, like going to school, and then I went to an art school down here called New World School of the Arts in downtown Miami, which is like a section of UF. Golin that were hiring they needed like a design intern for about a year. So I applied, and then I actually got it because they liked my portfolio because I knew not only knew how to to illustrate, but I also knew how to animate, and that was like a big thing they wanted someone to do, like some motion graphics to make GIFs, and that's how it kind of started, working on making GIFs and animated content for socials. And then pretty much after a year of the internship, when it was about to wrap up, they asked me if I could stay full time, even though I still had like a few months of school left. They just kept me as like a official full-time part-time person, so I get to go there after classes because I had less classes during the year, and just started working for Golin, and when I graduated I got there full-time. So that was one of the things that also made Golin different. They're very accommodating towards me because I guess they liked me so much as like all the hard work I did, and I really enjoyed most the projects I was getting into because it was like my first actual it wasn't like my first graphic design job, but it was like my first like design job where I had to make stuff for like clients and all that. Um, and yeah, after graduating, I stayed, and I really like the work-life balance, and I like the opportunities, especially like during the pandemic where we were talking to everyone from different offices at Golin. So there was like different clients and different projects I got to work on, especially like McDonald's. That was like one of the fun clients that I got to work with, and yeah, that's basically my story.
Very cool. So basically, shit got real all of a
Yeah.
sudden. Nice, nice, great. We'll look into some of your work a little bit later. Frank, why don't you tell us about yourself? This
Yeah,
winding road you
yeah.
started
But my
out.
story is probably gonna take the whole podcast. I mean, just because I'm old enough that yeah, I'm too old, so I guess my story is long. Yeah, I was born in Panama, raised in Panama. I went to school for creative writing in Tallahassee, Florida. I never actually worked on that. I went back home and I became a banker. I don't know how that happened, but it did. So I was a banker for like 7 years. At some point of my career as a banker, I mean, like I was a really bad banker. I had no idea what I was doing. I was just, like questioning everything. Like, why is this way? And since I was questioning everything, like I changed things in the banking industry. I was like, why are car loans 5 years? And they were like, because that's the way we've been doing it always. I'm like, why don't we do it 6 years, 7 years? And they were like, because no one is doing it. I'm like, man, let's try it. And then suddenly all banks started doing that. I'm like, oh my God, like you don't need to understand banking. In my head, I was like, I don't need to be good at finance. I need to know what I want as a customer, because customers hate banks. So, like if you just think like a customer, like maybe for customers that's even better than, of course it's important to have the people who actually know what they're doing. So after I quit banking, I joined Miami Art School. I moved to Miami. Originally, I graduated. My second year Miami Art School, I actually did it in the New York branch, and that's when I graduated and I started doing a little bit of freelancing. And then I actually landed on my first full-time job in advertising, which was Droga 5. Back in the day, like in New York, I'm talking around, like 2013. I worked at Droga for around, like 3 years and a half. Then I actually moved to Miami again because Anselmo Ramos was starting GOT. And then I joined GOT. My partner and I joined GOT when there were two other creatives, Jeff and Ellie and us. And basically we were the first, creative teams. And, we worked on all the pitches and everything. And then, like my question about what do I love about Golin has a little bit to do with gut, because at gut I realized, like there was a world called earned media that, you do things and media picks it up, and it's a hybrid, it's a PR, it could be PR, but it's a hybrid. It's just, like ideas that people actually want to watch. There's a button in YouTube that says skip these ads. So, I got, like really excited about that type of work. And at some point I got a call, from Golin it was Golin Chicago. So I used to work at Golin Chicago sitting in Miami. I was like, no, that's too cold for me. I'm from Panama, like I can't go, I can't go to Chicago. That would be illegal. And so I started working, as a creative director in McDonald's. Then I started playing with more brands and more brands. And then, in my mind at that moment, like was like, what if I apply now this PR knowledge that I have back to advertising? So I went to an agency called Mojo Supermarket in Williamsburg, New York, or Greenpoint, Williamsburg again. But I was like, that's too cold again for me. So I'll stay in Miami again. So I worked from Miami, and Mojo did some fun work for Facebook, did the work for Jeremy Allen White, with the couch. That one, like, locally is one of those things that one day you wake up, you had a stupid idea, and then you're like, holy shit, like, how, did that just win more than 30 awards, which was, like insane. Those mostly because it was a lot of fun, like it didn't feel like working. And for me, those are the best type of jobs, like that you don't feel like you're working. And then I received a call from Golin again, asking me if I wanted to come back, but this time they were like for the Miami office. And I'm like, this makes sense because I've been working from Miami, but not, in an agency that's actually in Miami. So I joined and I love it. We worked with a bunch of really, really great people. And again, our focus is earned media, which is, like something that I really love, and I get to work with again, like very, very great people. So it's awesome.
Great. This concept of earned media is interesting. I think when we met a couple of weeks ago in Miami, you said something like making interesting creative that actually matters to people, right?
Yeah, it's like, like, of course I've made ads all my life, but like it, it's we've all been there, like trying to watch a movie or like a show on Hulu, and then the ad comes. And even us, we come up with the ideas. We're like, we have to watch this ad. Why? Like I was watching that. So it's kind of like the focus on earned is like, instead of trying to force people to watch something, what if we make something that people will actually voluntarily want to watch, want to experience, So yeah.
That's spectacular. So I guess Ruth, going back to you, the way we think about it when we make music for an ad is that it has to be culturally relevant, right? Like whatever we do has to be cultural. It can't just be, hey, I want to take this message and shove it on you. It has to be relevant to you, and the way we try to make it relevant to the person we're talking to is trying to figure out what is culturally relevant, right? Like in just in society. And just from seeing the breadth of your work, you seem to be doing a lot of cultural things, right? Do you want to tell us a little bit about just your engagement as an artist, I guess?
Yeah, for sure. So I like as an artist, like music does have like big influences on me. In middle school, I was like really into jazz at one point, so I learned how to play the saxophone and the trumpet. It was like a short life, but through that, I really appreciated like jazz and just to started to focus more on like the visual arts. And as I got older, I found myself in like the creative process where I'm just like listening to music a lot, like especially like different types of like music whenever I create work. Like I'm listening to like rap and hip hop. I'm listening to like up tempo, upbeat jazz. I'm listening to a lot of Japanese rock, and J rock, and a lot of like Japanese pop music. Like I have like different playlists for everything. I'm listening to rock music. I'm listening to System of a Down and Slipknot on like different days. Like I listen to a lot of different music just to not only be in tune with like different cultures, but also kind of like add that type of like raw energy into my artwork. And then like even recently, this past weekend, it was like Rolling Loud, which is like one of the biggest hip hop festivals that happens, I guess, ever. And I got the opportunity to do like live painting with this organization called Secret Walls, where it's basically like an art battle. We have like 90 minutes to paint like a giant piece of a like canvas, and whoever is the best like gets voted through like the crowd or online, and we get bragging rights basically. And so there's like all these different types of like acts going on through like the 90 minutes. I was listening to like Caribou. She came on. We have this like rapper who was like very well known in Miami. His name was like Rob Banks, and I heard him came on during my set because I wanted to see him, but his stage was like down across from mine where I was painting. So I was like, oh yeah, Rob Banks is on. I'm channeling like all that like cool energy that I'm hearing with like hip hop because there's like a whole culture behind it. Um, and I find myself like really in tuned with it. And I think like it's really important with like especially in like visual arts and like visual media that music is kind of like I won't say it's secondary, but it's like a league of its own as like an added element to whatever you're trying to put out. Um, so like even when I create artwork, I always have like an audio element whenever I post so people can understand like what vibe am I giving off. I guess like really cool thought I had recently was like with a lot of video game content coming out and new games coming out this year, I heard like this funny complaint where it's like, why is it that when we see like a new trailer or like a teaser drop and like sometimes the music is not good, like you hear like very basic like trap beats for like different like it's like hip hop trap beats or something, and it's for like this video game trailer, and some people were just like, why did they pick this music for this game? And I think about it too. I'm just like, yeah, this music doesn't like it sounds like, oh, we need something cool to go with the trailer. So let's just slap this beat on it. Where it makes no sense and it just doesn't sound good. And people can hear like you can hear the authenticity with it as well. So with
Or their
creating
lack
just
of
like
it, right? Or the
yeah,
lack
like a
of
lack of it.
authenticity.
It's a lack of authenticity with it. So that's why it's important to like to be very open-minded and like listen to different types of I'm trying to be open-minded. I don't like country music, but I listen to a little bit like here and there. Do I continue it once in a while and then I'm like, all right, that's enough and I go back. But like just things that you really like are like better antiquated with yourself is so much better. Like and the payoff is much better as well.
Yeah, it's so interesting how music has the ability. It's weird, right? It's really weird. It's music. It's sounds that are organized in time. That's one of the definitions of music that I like as a musician. I'm like a technician in music, right? As a composer. It's just music that has order in time. But that's just the bare bones of it. Because when you look at it from a cultural point of view, it's so much more, right? Like who's making it, who's listening to it, what are they wearing, what are they saying? Um, and it's so cool that you use music when you're showing your graphic work to contextualize it. How do you think that relationship works?
Um, I mostly just think of it as like a plus one to like the visuals, because I also want people to understand me also like as an attempt to understand not only like if you can't understand the work visually, maybe with the music you'll understand like the type of person I am or like the type of person that I like, just like a little conception of like of who I am. Like oh yeah, she likes a lot of hip hop, and then like all of a sudden I make a post and there's like Japanese music playing, like Japanese rock music, and it's like okay, this person really likes this artist has like a wide range of like music that she likes, and I think that's just like an added piece where it can help have people like your audience understand you a little bit, and it's also kind of like an inside if you know you know type thing, like some of the songs are like included in like anime, so like when someone like hears the song and say hey I know that song, it's from like a specific anime or like just like something from like a soundtrack that sounds like really amazing. And even when you brought up like culture of like who listens to it and like who's it for and what type of people like it. All I remember is like Tyler the Creator with his latest album. A lot of his music, his latest album Chromacopia was really stems from like HBCU bands, and which is funny because when I used to do like jazz and band in like middle school, yeah, like we played at a few pep rallies. Um, so that was just like the culture when you go to like in like a very all black school, and then like okay, this is the band. Um, so yeah, that culture is very intertwined with like the music, and even with like visuals as an artist, it's important to just to show that piece of you as like as an attempt, honestly.
It's like it frames the piece, right? It's like
Yeah,
it puts it in context.
exactly.
But you're also and the cool thing about it is being an artist, you get to choose the frame when you're choosing the music,
Yeah. Think about it as
right?
like an invisible frame over like your piece.
Exactly. Yeah, that's so cool. And also like these times, right, where it's so rare to see just a visual piece because we're interacting with it
Yep.
through digital media usually, right? Like
Mhm.
people may or may not show up to an art show, but then you're capturing that and you're posting it, right? So maybe, and we're all hoping for an impact of 10 times the amount of people that will go and see something in person, which by the way also has a musical element because when you're showing urban art, you're also playing music off a speaker, but then you're like recording that and then you're posting that and then that goes like continues flying. So the audio element almost becomes like a necessity, right?
Yeah.
Like it's hard to think about just this piece of art. Like
No,
what sound would that come with?
exactly too, because like even with art shows and when I host art shows and I'm a part of it, there's we always have like DJs. Like no matter where you go, if you're like if it's like an art opening and a gallery opening, there will be a DJ playing. There will be music. And it just depends on like who the DJ is. Like for a show that I had like a few months ago, I had like three DJs play during like the entire time. They took turns and they all went from jungle to like D&B and then like Jersey club and like house music. And that was just like the added element just to give the experience like, hey, this work is like the artwork is really good. And now that I'm hearing the music, it's like it brings like something different with you. Like it's something like you can't capture like, online. Sure, you could do like a recap and upload it. And then even then, like I watch DJ sets on like online too, and it makes me wish like, dang, I want to be there. Like I want to experience the music. But like even with like art shows, art galleries, I feel like this might be a new thing, honestly, too. Like just having DJs. Um, I don't know if it's because of the pandemic with the turn of it, and like you have all these DJs like playing in like these miscellaneous places like grocery stores and like elevators and whatnot. But yeah, maybe it's just me, but I've been seeing like a turn of that, and just like having more like music played in like art shows and galleries. I think it's like just a funny consequence of that, just that happening.
Yeah, really cool. So Frank, from all of your years heading campaigns and shooting scripts, and
Yep.
how do you think this relationship works out when you're not framing a piece of art, but you're framing with music, you're contextualizing an idea on a television commercial? How much do you think the music influences a script or an idea?
I think it's almost like every idea is already, even before it's shot, it already has the influence of music. Because, for example, like at least for me as a writer, when I'm writing a script, I'm writing it listening to music to try to get me into that vibe, whether it's, like something dramatic or whether, it's a piece of comedy, like, and especially with a piece of comedy, I remember back in the day, I had this playlist that was called Piano Music for Funerals. It was very sad music, but for some reason, I wrote funny things, like, just like listening to really sad things put me, like in a funny mood for writing. I don't know why. And then, like when I'm writing comedy, script or whatever, nowadays I always listen to like awkward elevator music. That's what I have in my head. So, it's just like really awkward elevator music makes me write very awkwardly and like painfully awkward. So music is, like it's always been a part of, like the process. Sometimes music is the idea. Sometimes, like the idea is creating a piece of music, is like working with an artist to modify a song. So I think music has always been in the creative process. I mean, like, especially for me, like I play music, like that's, like when I'm not, like doing these, I'm actually playing music. So music never stops, like when it comes to this. And if you think about it, like Ruth was saying, like in the video game trailers, if you put the wrong song, suddenly all the comments are going to be about the wrong song. They're not going to be about how amazing this game might look. They're going to be about like, what's up with that song? Like, so that's power of music. You have the power of, like ruining the piece. You have the power of being very neutral and just like no one cares about, like the piece of music, or you have the power of really elevating it. And sometimes it's hard because as a musician, I already in my mind have an idea of what the song should be. And I think that's actually like, it's good, but it's also kind of bad because then you miss experimenting with other things. So sometimes I push myself into things like, this is what I think it should be. What is the opposite of that? And just try a wild card, a complete wild card. And, like, and we were talking about this at the office the other day, like when you're watching, like a murder scene and you have a psychopath, but then the music is like beautiful, classical. So it's that contrast of the violence that's happening with that. So I like those contrasts as well, and experimenting with things.
Yeah, like Kubrick at The Clockworking Orange.
Yep.
Like it's an entirely violent, aggressive, dystopian movie scored by Beethoven. It's
100%.
and I think it was David Lynch that said that music is half of the movie, right? Because if you had that script and you just played like very aggressive hard rock, metal, thrash, it would. I'm not sure it would have been the same.
It would have not been the same. It's that contrast that sometimes, like creates the right emotion. And if you think about it, imagine, like even things like rom-coms, if you removed, like all the acoustic songs from any Freddie Prinze Jr. movie, like people would probably not watch the movies. I'm not saying, because it's the things that actually puppeteer when you're watching a movie. Yes, it is the emotion caused by the dialogue and the situation, but it's really the music that's driving that tear to actually come out, or sometimes even, if you want to create awkwardness, like music is so powerful that when the music is not there, it also creates an emotion. Sometimes you're like, like the sound design for this scene is going to be not having music on purpose, and that's a creative decision.
Yeah, there's a saying. Well, I'm from Argentina,
Yeah.
and our tango is sort of like one of our foundational styles of music. And there is this tango arranger composer called Troilo, and there's an old saying that goes that Troilo's eraser is worth so much more than so many others' pencils.
Yeah.
Because he knows exactly how to use silence. It's such a
100%.
powerful, important element to film scoring and music in general, right? Like it's like even Prince in his music. I remember in some of my mixing and mastering classes, Prince is so scarce. It's hard to listen to find a Prince song that's just overwhelming with stuff. He's really good at creating space.
Being very economic with the instruments and just using what's necessary. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like And then one of the things that comes out of that is one idea, one musical idea at any particular time. Because like one of our mistakes as musicians is we have this really good harmony and it's a great idea. And then you have this really good melody and then it's a great idea and they go well together. And then you have this other counter melody that goes also really well with it, but then it starts distracting, right? So one of the things we always try to do is one idea at a time.
And understand when to stop, because it's like, understand, because again, like it happens to me right now that I'm recording music, like this weekend I'm going to be recording, like a couple of songs, and you're doing something and you're right, for example, about a vocal harmony, you're like, should I add one more voice? Like, or what if I do this guitar, like, like here, and you're like, yeah, it sounds, especially when you're listening to, you're like, I can add these and I can add these and I can add these. And then suddenly when you listen to a song, like the whole idea, it's lost and buried under things that, yes, they go well together, but you have to pick and choose. Now that we were talking about silence, it made me think about something kind of like that weird and interesting. But if you think about it, silence is a part of a song, right? So is silence music? I'm asking, like because silence in the context of a song is part of music. So a moment of pure silence, is that music? It's
It
crazy.
can be. Yeah.
Right? It's like a weird question to ask. It's like, if silence, the context matters, but if you put silence in the middle of a song, that's just musical silence. But silence by itself is when it's almost like voluntary and it's, like mindfully created on purpose. It's music.
Like when there are like these random, not even random, but these calculated pauses in a song,
Yeah.
and it just
Yeah.
amplifies when the actual like beat comebacks on. Like,
100%.
yeah, I think that's also a part of it too. Like you just start appreciating it so much more. It kind of reminds me when Kanye West made that little whatever he made, and then like you're able to put songs through it, and you can like dissect different chords, and then now people like use it to like make remixes where they took out like the beat or they took out different like vocals, and then things just get more quiet, and then you add it to other things. Like it's just kind of cool. Like a part of silence is a part of the process too. Sometimes you just gotta, if you listen to nothing, then it's like no, I'm you never know what could make, honestly, with that, just with like a few moments of silence.
Yeah.
Yeah, that works too, honestly.
Yeah.
That's there's a John Cage, maybe you've heard of him, but he has this very famous silent piece, right? It's called 433, and it's in at face value. What happens is you go to see the performance of 433, and there's a pianist that sits on stage, and he sits down for 4 minutes and 33 seconds and does nothing,
Amazing.
and it's called a silent piece. But then, you can think of it as conceptual art, and there is an element of that for sure. But John Cage was full of intention when he made that, and his entire thing was around the idea of what music is, just going straight back to your point, Frank. And what he said, there's a couple of elements here, right? Like one of them was, first of all, music is a cultural thing. I mean, there are sounds in nature, and some of those sounds are musical, but music is a human expression. So, to his point, the idea was that if you are listening to something mindfully, and the concept of a concert, the context of a concert makes you think about the sounds as musical and pay attention. His thing was music can live outside of the academic tradition of a classically trained pianist. If he sits down on stage and does nothing for 4 minutes and 33 seconds, you're going to be listening to everything else that's going on. So
Yep.
all the random sounds in that silence, you're going to be so attentive that then that is the piece of music. It happens only one time. It happens in that specific moment, and that is the music. It's the natural sounds. He had a thing with natural sounds, and that everyone could be a musician. You don't have to be classically trained to be a musician. It's about intent.
It's intent. That's really interesting. That's very also very Andy Kaufman of, like of him in a way, right? Like which I love. I worked once with these two guys at Drovia 5, and it's one of my favorite ideas that I've ever seen in the world. And it's weird because I think I've never told them this, but when Steve Jobs died, they actually uploaded a minute of silence on iTunes. And I thought, like, that's brilliant. It's just, like uploading a minute of silence on iTunes. It's just like brilliant.
That's spectacular. I didn't know about that. I want to go and listen to it now.
Yeah, listen to a minute of silence, right?
Yeah, that's spectacular. Okay, guys, I thank you so much for your time. Like, I feel like we could be talking for ages. But we've already been at it for half an hour, and just not to drag this along too much, the last thing we do in our episodes is we ask our guests to think about a question that we should ask the next guest. So our last guest, Kirsten White, she's a producer at Makers here in Toronto.
Yep.
Left us with the following question, which is, a lot of the times in advertising, we need to say no to clients, to our bosses, to the people we collaborate with, to the musicians that come, to you with a crazy idea that doesn't work, or to ourselves. So the question was, what is the nicest way you said F you to someone without really saying no? That was the question.
That's a great question. Ruth, you wanna start?
I mean, I don't have that much experience talking to clients, thankfully. I'm just there to make the stuff. But if it was me and I was like, usually the nicest way people tell me no is that, like, this sounds really cool, but I don't know if this is a good fit. Let's save it for something cooler.
That's a great one. I think, like explaining the why, no, it's always, like it's not that the idea is bad. It's not that the song is bad. It's like context. We've been talking about a context a lot, so we need to explain, like why not. But I think something really important is letting them know, that the answer is no. Because if not, what's worse than a no? Dragging someone in a maybe, for a long
Yeah.
extended period of time. A never ending maybe is way worse than a no. So, it's I like to try to give no's with a context, if that makes sense.
Very wise. A never-ending maybe is much worse than a no. So thank you so much. Great. So what question would you ask the next person on the show?
I know, like, a lot of people like to cold call, but a lot of people don't like to write back. But what's like a way for someone to stand out when they reach out to you?
That's a wonderful question. That's a wonderful question. Great. We'll take it down. We'll ask the question. Do you have one, Frank, or should we go with Ruth?
I think we should go with that one. I think it's amazing. Yeah, I had one that was really dumb, so I think that makes sense.
Okay, perfect. Great. So thank you so much, guys, for being here.
Thank you.